Okay, we are back. Let's start case number 16. We're finally back to the current time, but it's altered. Back to the future. And we're not referencing the Marty McFly one. The movie starring with Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. Matthew, according to the Time Circus, we're home. New York, 2029. Awesome! We're finally back! I can't wait to see the Chief and tell him everything. About our sabotaged time machine, about Leonardo da Vinci fixing the... Can the official briefing wait until tomorrow? I'm ready for a shower and the longest nap in history. Let's go outside, everyone, to breathe the sweet air of 2029 again. Home sweet home, Matthew. Wait, some of these buildings look familiar, but is that a giant pyramid in the middle of Manhattan? What's been happening in New York since we've been gone? You, stop there! Who are you and what? Silence! You're under arrest by order of the Pharaoh. Under arrest? Sir, we're agents of the temporal crimes. We know who you are. Enemies of the Ptolemy dynasty. We have orders to seize your time machine and take you to the New Cairo penitentiary. New Cairo? What are you? You, girl, with the Egyptian facial markings. You're coming with us to the palace. Take your hands off Nebbit. She's... Quiet, outlaws. Senior Trooper Matthew, your adventure's over. Your cell awaits. Let's go. Uh-oh. Matthew, what's happening? Why are we prisoners? I tried asking those guards, but they gave me a black eye instead of answers. We were ambushed, Matthew. Those guards are waiting for us to return, to seize our time machine and arrest us. What about this palace? Where they've taken Nebbit? What if they discover she's from the past? Or if they hurt her? Those guards look Egyptian, and they said New York was now called New Cairo. Nebbit being Egyptian might work in her favor. But I don't understand. My readings confirmed we landed in New York 2029, except this isn't the 2029 I remember. Something's very wrong. We must find the Chief and figure out what's happened, which means we have to get out of here. Matthew's right. Let's search ourselves for anything that might help us escape. Come on, team, we can do this. Okay. So, for the first time in quite a while, we will not be having the body in the first crime scene. Matthew, I think one of the guards dropped that piece of paper. It looks like a to-do list. Luckily, I grabbed the forensic kit from the time machine. Let's recover the faded text and see if it'll help us escape. Okay. And let's just get this out of the way. That guard's paper has password written on it, Matthew. This could be a way out of here. There's a drawing of an Egyptian deity. Perhaps if we type their name into that security panel, it'll open the cell door. It's worth a try. Matthew, can you reach that security panel? Careful not to touch those laser bars. So I will have to get some more stars. And I'll do that right now. So sit tight, everybody. Alright, I got myself 7 stars. So let's get the results, or let's do the security panel first. Anubis. How did I know that? ANU. That's drawings of Anubis, Matthew. That's the password, and it's deactivated the laser bars. We're free. Alright, everyone, let's get out of here before... Not so fast. Did you think you could... Whack. Oh, nice going, Penelope. Ha! It worked! I learned that trick from Alexander in King Francis's court. Good job, Penelope. Let's hurry to Time headquarters. If there's anywhere we'll find answers, it's there. Matthew, this is Times Square, except it's not. Everything is different somehow. And there's hieroglyphics everywhere. The city looks like a strange mix of modern New York and ancient Egypt. I have a bad feeling about this, Matthew. Where's Time headquarters? All I see here is an apartment building. But we're definitely at the right address. And Matthew's right. One of the residents of that building is Christopher Scott. The chief must live here. Well, those guards are after us, so we can't stand here talking. Let's go upstairs and find the chief. He'll explain everything. Oh no, that's the chief, I think. There we are. No, didn't get the first star. My God, Matthew! The chief! He's dead! Someone slashed his throat with that electric knife! Look at all this blood! No! How can the chief be gone? Why would anyone do this? This is a nightmare, Matthew. First we're arrested and our time machine is confiscated. The world we know is drastically altered. And now our chief's been murdered? What the heck is going on? I think deep down we all know what this means. There's clearly been a major disruption of the timeline. This is not our 2029. We're in New Cairo, ruled by a strange Egyptian dynasty. We have no way to contact time, and for some reason we're wanted criminals. Well, we might be fugitives, but we're also the best detectives in history. We must get to the bottom of this. Janice Theo, I want you to set up makeshift labs in the chief's apartment. I'll examine the body straight away, Matthew. I won't have my equipment, but I'll do my best. Matthew, Jack, you examine that electric knife. It must be our murder weapon. Go ahead and collect some of that strange substance from the blade. And we should search this apartment for more clues. We must learn everything we can about our chief in this alternate timeline. Let's get to work. Okay. Excuse me. Graduation picture. Matthew, you found a photograph of the chief. He's very young, but I'd recognize him anywhere. That's his graduation from the New Cairo College of Science, which means the Egyptians already ruled when the chief was young. But it also means not everything is different in this timeline. Our chief also studied science. He was a nuclear physicist before he joined Time. Who's the other guy in the photo? Do you recognize him? No, but now that we're back in 2029, we can probably find this guy through social media. And putting that torn paperback together should be easy, Matthew. Come on, team. Let's do this for the chief. And we will. I'm gonna get more stars though, so sit tight, everybody. Alright, I got all stars. I have 23. So let's see if we can. Let's see what we can do out of this. Got it. Creamy substance. Nice work collecting that substance from the electric knife, Matthew. Let's see what Theo can make of it. Matthew, the guy in the chief's graduation photo is his brother, Emmett. I found him on FriendNet and sent him a message. He's agreed to come here and talk with us. Hopefully we can convince the chief's brother to help us find the killer. And let's hope like hell that it's not him. Whoever you people are, you're telling me my brother's been murdered? That's insane! You don't know the half of it. And what are you doing in Chris's apartment? We're your brother's friends. We came for a visit and found him dead. Believe us, we're just as dismayed. We're trying to understand what happened before the cops. I mean, I don't blame you for not trusting the cops. They're a bunch of corrupt bullies with no interest in helping anyone. But I can't tell you much about my brother. I didn't see him very often, especially after he got fired. Fired? From the Time Agency? What Time Agency? No, from the Research Institute. Physics or something. That's what he's been doing ever since he graduated. But they let him go about a year ago, and Chris got depressed. Stopped going out, hardly returned my calls. It's sad to say, but I bet his landlord knows more about my brother than I do. Anyway, I better go. You look like a decent bunch. Let's have a drink one day to honor his memory. Matthew, my head is spinning. Apparently the chief never worked for Time in this timeline. He was a scientist all his life. Yeah, his brother's never even heard of the agency. Matthew's right. We should talk to that landlord Emmett mentioned. There's a directory by the front door. His name is Abrax Tiakin. He lives on the top floor. But we'd better pretend to be private detectives. We don't want Mr. Tiakin calling the real cops. Mr. Tiakin, we're private detectives investigating the murder of one of your tenants, Christopher Scott. What? That guy in 257B is dead? Do you know how hard it'll be to find a new tenant? Anyway, go ahead and ask your questions. Was there ever a government agency in this building? Something called government agency? No, it's always been an apartment building. My family's owned it for years. I see. And what about Mr. Scott? Did you know him? No, he was always pretty quiet. Exactly the kind of tenant I like. Although he's been late with his rent recently since he lost his job. Anyway, I better start putting an advert together now that I have a vacant apartment. Okay. There we go, Lenny Saunders. Matthew, I can't believe the chief's dead. I thought we'd be giving him a debrief, not solving his murder. I know, things are pretty bleak, but we've got another clue. The torn paper Matthew found is a business card for a taxi driver named Lenny Saunders. Let's call Mr. Saunders and have him meet us out front of the building. Okay. Somebody call a taxi? Where are you folks headed? We don't need a ride. We're after information about one of your passengers. Information? If you're not paying for a ride, I don't have time for talk. Please, Mr. Saunders, we need your help. Our friend's dead, and we need to know what happened to him. His name was Chris Scott. Mr. Scott? Yeah, he's a regular. I drove him home last night. Last night? Where did you pick him up? Well, it was over by those... Look, I ain't done nothing wrong. Mr. Saunders, Forget it. I don't want to get mixed up in any funny business. Let him go, Matthew. We can contact Mr. Saunders if we need him. That'll do. I'll let these two run their courses. So for now, this is Matthew. See you soon. Okay, we have come back. Let's get the results of the creamy substance first. I found an old microscope the chief had lying around, Matthew, so I've set up a makeshift lab in his bathroom. But you won't believe this. I looked up my family to see whether they are okay in this timeline. I found them online, but our entire family fortune has disappeared. My parents run a small bakery in New Cairo. I wish I could contact them, but while we're wanted fugitives, it's too dangerous. We're all concerned about our loved ones, but right now we must focus on our investigation, like that creamy substance Matthew found on the murder weapon. The compound is a mixture of beeswax and tallow, the primary ingredients of leather conditioner, or more specifically, crocodile skin leather. Crocodile skin? Yes, crocodiles are sacred to the Egyptians and are considered a symbol of power. In New Cairo, wearing crocodile skin shoes must be a real status symbol. If the killer smudged this leather conditioner on the murder weapon, they must be wearing crocodile skin shoes. Matthew, you'll have to hold me back from skinning them alive once I get my hands on the chief's killer. Isn't this terrible, Matthew? Not only has our world been turned upside down, the chief's been murdered. Who knows what's happened to our timeline? I hope my grandchildren are okay. We'll find the answers to all our questions, Janice, but first we must catch the chief's killer. Well, I don't need my lab to tell you the chief's throat was cut with that electric knife you found, Matthew. It's a nasty wound. Who would do such a thing? While I can't tell you exactly who, I started to build a profile of the killer. I found traces of carbonated liquid deep in the wound, splashed there by the killer during the murder. I suspected it was some kind of soft drink. There was nothing in the apartment, so I went and bought every fizzy drink I could find from the shop downstairs. After cross-referencing them all, I determined the killer splashed rocket spinks into the throat wound. It's an energy drink. The killer will need all the energy they can get to stay ahead of you, Matthew. Matthew, we faced incredible odds getting back to 2029, only to find everything's changed. The New York we know is gone, replaced by the bizarre New Cairo. Our time machine's been confiscated, we're wanted criminals, and Nevitt's been captured. And worst of all, Chief Scott is dead. So far, our investigation has been almost fruitless, Matthew. The Chief's brother Emmett said that in this timeline he was a nuclear scientist, but Emmett knew nothing about time. I've done some searching on the internet, Matthew, and from what I can tell, the agency and even time travel itself don't exist in this timeline. That's nuts! Meanwhile, the building's landlord hardly knew anything about the Chief's personal life. And that taxi driver was afraid to even talk to us. We must find out what caused this mess, starting by solving the Chief's murder. Did you say murder? You're the people asking questions about that dead guy upstairs? Maybe. What's it to you? For the right price, I might have information you'd be interested in. I saw the killer run out of the building. And we'll get to chapter 2 after this. Do not go anywhere. Okay, we have come back. Let's start chapter 2 of Back to the Future. Maybe, and who might you be? The name's Anna Blanchard, and for the right price I can tell you who did it. I saw the killer run out of the building. You saw the killer? You've got our attention, lady. Tell us everything. So, Miss Blanchard, you claim you saw the killer. How about coughing up a couple of dirhams first? We don't have any dirhams. Well, I don't give anything away. I'm out of here. Not so fast. If you know something about this murder, you're gonna spill it. Alright, alright. I was rummaging through the garbage when somebody threw a blood-stained glove in the trash. A blood-stained glove? Matthew, that must have been the killer. Did you see what they looked like? No. When I looked up, they'd already run off. You'll find that glove in the garbage can on the corner, but I'm not fishing it out for you. Do you know Christopher Scott, the man who was killed, or anyone else from this building? Nah, I just hang out here asking for change. Alright, come on, Matthew. If the killer discarded evidence in the street, we must find it. it. Oh. That was pretty pitiful. George Orwell, 1987. Darn it, and I would have had the first star if I didn't make that dumb mistake. This must be the trash can that Drifter mentioned. Let's dig in and look for the killer's glove. But what's so interesting about that book, Matthew? 1987 by George Orwell. That sounds almost familiar, but not quite. Knockoff of George Orwell, who wrote 1984, I believe. I don't know, maybe that was Aldous Huxley. Something's written on the inside cover. 257B. That's Chief Scott's apartment number. This book must be his. Let's retrieve the rest of what's written here. Moment, folks. Alright, I got 4 stars. Let's examine the faded text right now. Matthew, there's a dedication written inside this book, in the chief's handwriting. It says, Rahima, I think you'll like this, the guy from 257B. You've seen this name before, Matthew? Right. The building's directory of tenants lists Rahima Tamoon in apartment 258A. She's the chief's neighbor. Clearly, the chief and this Rahima Tahoon were acquainted, which means we should speak with her. Okay. Talk to her, Rahima Tamoon. Miss Tamoon, we're friends of your neighbor, Christopher Scott. We asked some questions about his murder. Isn't it awful? I can't believe it happened right next door. Did you know Mr. Scott very well? We found this book and... Put that away! 1987 is banned, regarded as a manifesto against the Ptolemy dynasty. Sorry, we're not here to get you into trouble. That wasn't Chris's intention either. He was fascinated by history, collecting books about the past. We chat in the hall sometimes about literature and quickly realized we were kindred spirits, so he trusted me to show me that book. Watch out, it's a dangerous world out there. For whatever reason, Chris ended up dead. Be careful you aren't next. Bloody glove. Jackpot, Matthew! This glove you found in the trash is covered in blood. The killer's glove could go a long way towards solving the chief's murder, so let's get it to Theo's lab. Okay. 12 hours. I'll see you guys when this is done. So for now, this is Matthew. Catch you later. We are back. Let's get the results of the bloody glove from Theo. Matthew, this glove is a valuable clue. It definitely belongs to the killer. A rudimentary analysis of this blood has confirmed it's the chief's. Unfortunately, apart from the blood, there are no other traces of any kind. Then how is it a valuable clue? Well, this section of clear plastic is unusual. It looks like a small window. I did some research and it turns out this window allows the glove's wearer to use a subcutaneous microchip. A what? A microchip embedded under a person's skin. Apparently citizens of New Cairo can use these chips, called a JIP chip, for anything from digital payments to accessing their homes. This window allows people to swipe their JIP chip even while they're wearing gloves, which means your killer has a JIP chip. Well, it won't be long before we're under the killer's skin. And if they discarded evidence outside, Matthew, maybe they left other clues inside the apartment. Let's look around again. Okay. Broken machine. Got it. Even in this dystopian world of New Cairo, you can trust the chief to have a messy desk. Wait, Matthew, that letter you found addresses the chief as the chief. How's that possible? Time doesn't even exist here. And that handwriting looks strangely familiar. Let's clear away this residue to see who wrote this letter. And if you think that broken device is important, Matthew, go ahead and reassemble it. We're gonna go ahead and do everything right now. Got it. This device looks like a modem. The chief would have used this to connect to the internet. We can analyze this modem to learn more about the chief and maybe get a lead on his killer. Let's have Kai dig into the modem's data bank. And the dusty letter. Oh, it's our letter we left him. No wonder that handwriting's so familiar, Matthew. It's mine. This is the letter we left for the chief 60 years ago. Dear Chief, our time machine was sabotaged. We are stranded in 1969. This was our call for help. But in this alternate timeline, Christopher Scott wasn't our chief and had no idea who we were. This letter must have been pure nonsense to him. Do you think he might have shown it to anyone else? Perhaps that gray residue will give us a clue. Let's put it under the microscope Theo found. Cigar ashes. That gray residue you collected off our letter to the chief is cigar ash, Matthew. Wait, the chief's brother Emmett was smoking a cigar. Is it possible he's read our letter? He claimed he never heard of time, but maybe he knows more than he's letting on. Let's invite the chief's brother back for that drink he suggested. We can slip the letter into our conversation. I'm glad you invited me for that drink. Hopefully my brother has something in the house. All I had at home was rocket spinks. Thanks for coming, Mr. Scott. While you're here, we wanted to ask you about this letter. My crazy brother and that blasted letter. I told you Chris had become a recluse after losing his job. But it was much worse than that. He was losing his mind. Chris kept going on about how this world wasn't right. New Cairo wasn't supposed to be this way. He was so paranoid, he wouldn't even let me use my Jip chip while I was around. Did your brother talk about time travel before he received this letter? Yes, and he claimed the letter from the past proved everything. Corresponding with people about time machines, calling him chief, it's madness. We got into a huge argument. Before things got violent, I turned on the heels of my crocodile skin shoes and left. I wish my brother had listened to reason. I just hope this lunacy didn't get him killed. I'll let the modem run its course. For now, this is Matthew. Catch you later. Alright, we have just come back and the modem is just finished. The chief's done a bang-up job of concealing his online activity on this modem, Matthew. There's no browsing history, no email records, nothing. Even my best recovery algorithms are useless. I wonder why the chief was so cautious. Do you think he has something to hide? Apparently, he had reason to be suspicious. This wiretap was planted inside his modem. A wiretap? Someone was spying on the chief? Exactly. The security protocols the chief had in place are rock solid, so the bug couldn't trace anything. But the IP address of the wiretap links back to the top floor of this building. The top floor? That's where the chief's landlord lives. Why was he tracking the chief's online activity? Let's ask Mr. Tiakin and find out. But tread carefully, Matthew. He may not be forthcoming about tapping the chief's modem. Would you help us with something, Mr. Tiakin? We're cleaning out our friend's apartment and found this. Do you know what it is? Not that it's any of your business, but that's a device that monitors online communication. As a landlord, I have every right to ensure my tenants aren't breaking the law. It's mandated by the dynasty. Do you suspect Mr. Scott was up to something? I can't prove anything, but the guy was obviously a misfit. He had no regard for the Ptolemy dynasty, and he didn't even believe in Ra. He scoffed at the worship of mere animals and golden idols. Now, if we're finished, I need to order a new pair of crocodile skin shoes with my Jip chip. The more we learn about the chief's murder, Matthew, the more questions we uncover. We know Chief Scott received our letter from 1969, which his brother said reinforced the chief's belief that this world wasn't as it should be. The fact that our letter exists means that although our timeline has been overwritten, Some elements of the past have survived. The chief in this reality was also considered a misfit, which is why his landlord had wiretapped his modem. Rahima Tamoon also said the chief shared literature outlawed by the dynasty with her. Could this subversive behavior have made the chief a target for murder? Well, now we're the targets, Matthew. Our pictures are all over the news. A bounty is out on our head. Oh boy. We'll see you guys for Chapter 3, so do not go anywhere. We are back. Let's start Chapter 3 of Back to the Future. This is where we last left off on. Citizens of New Cairo, Pharaoh Ptolemy is offering a reward for the capture of these malevolent apostates. These renegades should be considered extremely dangerous. They're to be seized and brought to the authorities. May Ra's light shine upon you. As if things weren't bad enough, what do we do? Matthew's right, we shouldn't be seen outside right now. Since we're stuck inside, we might as well search the chief's apartment again. There's the helmet. Matthew, that old-fashioned cell phone must be the chief's. If you can crack the password, we might learn something about the circumstances surrounding his murder. And the diagrams on these handwritten notes look like the ones in Da Vinci's treatise on time travel. But this chief wasn't working for time. It doesn't even exist here. Let's retrieve the rest of this page to figure out what this means. And if you think it's worth sifting through that flower pot, Matthew, I won't stop you. The chief's killer has eluded us long enough. I'd really like to get my hands on them, so let's get to work. Alright, I'm going to take care of everything now. Got it. Half-heart pendant. How strange, Matthew. There's a half-heart pendant buried in that flower pot. Aren't those the things couples give each other? There's no name, only the number 258A. That's the apartment of the chief's neighbor, Rahima Tamoon. She never said anything about being romantically involved with the chief. Let's find out why Miss Tamoon kept this from us. Oh, it's you. I thought you were delivering my rocket sphinx. I order it using my JIP chip from the same store as my landlord. Why didn't you tell us about your relationship with Mr. Scott? You clearly did more than discuss history and literature. I didn't mean to deceive you. It's just that I never knew where our relationship was at. 1 minute Kurtz was acting all gentlemanlike, showering me with attention. He even bought me these crocodile skin shoes. Then out of nowhere, Chris broke it off. He never even told me why. Just some lame excuse that it was for my own good. I imagine that must have hurt your feelings. Bah, I'll get over it. When someone treats you like that, maybe I am better off without him. Got it. You've unlocked the Chief's phone, Matthew. Let's get it to Kai, pronto. These are quantum theory computations, Matthew. Isn't that Da Vinci's conditional probability formula? Maybe the Chief was doing research into time travel. Apparently he had a research assistant named Anna Blanchard. Wait, isn't Anna Blanchard that homeless girl we met outside? She claims she knew nothing about Chief Scott, but she actually worked with him. Miss Blanchard needs to explain this. Back with a couple of dirhams after all? I could use a can of Rocket Spanks right about now. Anna, we know you worked with Chris Scott. Why didn't you tell us? That was months ago and it didn't end well. Why dig up the past? Because our friend's been murdered and we need to understand what happened. Mr. Scott was a funny guy to work with. He'd always been mixing his metaphors. A watch clock never boils was my favorite. But then he started researching particle physics. He was convinced that time travel was possible. The Institute directors disapproved and warned him to stop, but he ignored them. Eventually they fired him, putting him on a political blacklist, and because I was his assistant, they fired me too. I had a good life and a prospering career. My Jip account was loaded. Now I sleep in a dumpster and it's all Christopher's fault. And I'll let the Chief's phone run its course. I'll see you when that's done. I should have all 5 stars collected by then. Okay, we are back. Let's get the results of the Chief's phone from Kai. This phone is another example of the Chief covering his tracks, Matthew. It's a burner phone, and the text messages only go back a week. So it's likely the Chief replaces phones on a regular basis. Nevertheless, there's something interesting about those messages. We're all ears. Almost every day, the Chief sent pickup requests to that taxi driver you spoke to, Lenny Saunders, and each message included GPS coordinates. But the coordinates just correspond to a bunch of empty warehouses. And the final message is an angry reply from Saunders. Stop calling me, Scott. I'm not making any more of your pickups. The Chief can't tell us what this means, but Lenny Saunders can. Looks like we'll be calling him again after all. You again? I can't waste time talking all day. I got dirhams to earn. These crocodile skin shoes aren't cheap. You weren't exaggerating when you said Mr. Scott was a regular customer. He messaged you every day. Well, Then there's this last message. What made you so angry? Mr. Scott had me driving him to some dodgy places. I didn't feel safe. Not to mention the company he kept. Some of the shitty characters he'd ride with. You don't want to know. Actually, we do. We must know who these characters are. Well, you won't hear it from me. I'm done talking. I don't wish nothing bad on anybody, but I'm glad Mr. Scott's off my back once and for all. We're slowly getting a clearer picture of Chief Scott's life in New Cairo, Matthew, and it's pretty complicated. Apparently, research the Chief was conducting into time travel ultimately got him and his assistant Anna Blanchard blacklisted. After he was fired, he isolated himself, staying off the grid with burner phones. The Chief abruptly broke up with his girlfriend in order to protect her. While his mysterious journeys with shady characters were enough to freak out Lenny Saunders. He was clearly up to something. The question is, did it get him killed? As much as we should stay out of sight, Matthew, we must go outside and hunt for clues. It's the only way we'll find answers. Well, I had to let those sharing those coins go away, but that's all right. Got it. That empty can of Rocket Spinks is stained with blood, Matthew. We know the killer drinks that, so they must have discarded this can. Even without his lab, Theo can use that saliva around the rim to establish a DNA profile of the killer. Let's take a sample. And that CCTV camera would be an excellent clue, if it wasn't broken. It has a perfect view of the Chief's apartment entry, which the killer used to flee the building. Do you think you can repair the damage to this camera, Matthew? Then let's do it. Come on, let's get these clues back inside. With our faces all over the news, we're sitting ducks. Got it. You've repaired that CCTV camera, Matthew. If there's any usable footage of the killer, Kai will be the one to find it. close proximity with each other. Let's rush this sample of saliva from the killer's can of Rocket Sphinx to Theo, Matthew. And I'll see you guys when these two are finished. So I'll catch you later. Okay, we are back. I know this one has about 20 minutes to go, but I'm going to speed that up after this. I've tried my best to recover the footage from the CCTV camera, Matthew, and I've got good news and bad news. You might as well give us the bad news first. I isolated some footage of the killer as they exited the Chief's building. You can see them throwing away that blood-stained glove you found. But the damage to the camera was too severe to make a positive identification. The film is too pixelated. So what's the good news? That's where I come in, Matthew. Although we couldn't identify the culprit, I recognize a distinct shape on the killer's clothing. The shape is unmistakable, consistent with a symbol often worn by the ancient Egyptians. The killer is wearing a scarab brooch. The killer can try to hide behind their lies, Matthew, but their scarab brooch will be as plain as day. Even though this is only going to cost me one. It's frustrating, Matthew. The killer left behind a prime sample of saliva on that soft drink can, but I haven't got the suitable equipment to do a thorough DNA analysis. Did that sample give you any lead at all, Theo? There were just enough genetic markers to clearly isolate an X and a Y chromosome. And I don't care what timeline you're in, an X and a Y chromosome indicates only one thing. You can be certain the killer is a man. And that man will face our tough justice for killing the Chief. You've done it, Matthew. We've got all the proof we need to bring down the Chief's killer. Time may not exist in New Cairo, but they'll pay for their crime one way or another. Hard to believe it's not Emmett Scott. It isn't Lenny Saunders. Wait a minute. No? It is Abrax Tiakin. Still perfect. Abrax Tiakin, you were the one who killed your tenant, Christopher Scott. You entered his apartment, slashed his throat with an electric knife, and left him to die. You think I committed murder? That's a fascinating theory. We know you did it. We have a witness who saw you run out of the building, throwing away your blood-stained glove. You murdered our friend, and we want to know why. Very well. Telling you is of no consequence. I did kill your friend. I've been monitoring him for a while now. A real subversive he was, constantly refusing to toe the line, reading forbidden literature. I wasn't surprised when the order came down to eliminate him. You got an order? From whom? Have you been living under a rock? From the Ptolemy family, of course. They promised me a handsome reward to kill your friend. Mr. Scott failed to grasp that the only path to success and prosperity is unconditional obedience to the regime. And I've seen you on the news. You're wanted criminals. Now I can turn you in and claim a hefty bounty. So let's go. And don't try anything or I'm afraid we're not going anywhere. I'm choking. Nice work, Kai. Now that Tiakin's unconscious, let's get him tied up. Then we'll decide what to do next. Now that Abrax Tiakin is locked away in the chief's bathroom, Matthew, let's gather our thoughts. Apparently, Tiakin was ordered to murder the chief by the Ptolemy family because he was seen as a subversive element. But as far as we know, the most subversive thing he did was research time travel. That's what got him on the government's blacklist. The government obviously knows that time travel is possible because those guards were waiting to throw us in prison the second we arrived. Which can only lead to one conclusion. The Ptolemy dynasty masterminded the manipulation of the timeline, and they'll crush anyone who stands in their way. If they think murdering the chief and putting a price on our head will stop us, they'd better think again. Maybe this isn't the first time the dynasty has tried to stop us, Matthew. Someone did sabotage our time machine. Could they have been operating under the dynasty's orders? One thing is certain, if we're to repair the damage to the timeline, we need answers. And we won't rest until we find them. And find Nebbit to rescue her. We've got our work cut out for us, Matthew. Let's get to it. And we're going to Time is a Lie 1-5 after this. Okay, we have come back. Let's start Time is a Lie 1-5. Although we've captured the chief's killer, Matthew, our problems in this altered timeline aren't over. Our time machine's been seized, so making an escape is impossible. Nebbit's been hauled off to the Pharaoh's palace. And there's a price on our head, meaning we're virtually trapped inside the chief's apartment. But we can't stay here. The Pharaoh hired the building's landlord to murder the chief. Someone will eventually find us here. I have an idea, Matthew. The chief is under the watchful eye of the Ptolemy family because of his subversive behavior. And Lenny Saunders said the chief associated with shady characters in questionable parts of the city. Maybe we should seek out these characters. The chief clearly trusted them. It's risky, but under the circumstances, it's a chance we have to take. Matthew, you and Zara grill Lenny Saunders for any information you can. We won't take no for an answer this time. The rest of us should stay out of sight. What? We can't sit around while Nebbit is being held by those monsters. And if the Ptolemy dynasty is responsible for manipulating the timeline and stranding us in the past, we must learn everything we can about them. Alright, Jack, but Matthew's going with you. Don't venture too far afield, so start your search at the newsstand. Zara will call Mr. Saunders as soon as you're ready. Don't attract any unnecessary attention and keep your wits about you. Oh, there we go, newspaper. Excuse me. Judging by those ceremonial robes, Matthew, I bet that's Pharaoh Ptolemy and his queen on the New Cairo Times. If the Ptolemy family were responsible for manipulating the timeline, we must learn all we can about them. So let's get this newspaper back upstairs and retrieve the rest of that faded article. That headline reads Annual 5th of July Celebrations. Wait, Matthew, that's only a few days away. Whatever these celebrations are, they're connected to the Ptolemy dynasty. So there could be information about them in this article. Let's have Orlando delve into it. Now let's talk to Lenny Saunders. You're in no danger talking to us, Mr. Saunders. We know our friend wasn't killed by those shady characters you told us about, but we must find them. You guys aren't going to let this go, are you? I might as well tell you. Those people belong to an underground organization called the Resistance. Individuals determined to undermine the Ptolemy government. Resistance? There are people out there actively opposing the dynasty? That's great. I mean, that's a great blight on society. Do you know how we can find these traitors? Probably in those warehouses your friend had me drive into. But they change location every week, so I can't help you. But now that I think about it, your friend was always fidgeting with something in the back seat. Looked like a key or something. A key? That sounds promising, Matthew. And the good news is we can search for that inside the chief's apartment. Now that I've told you everything I know, please take these dirhams and leave me alone. There we go. I was gonna say it was kind of hard to miss. Not hard to miss that clue. The key Lenny Saunders mentioned could be anywhere, Matthew. I guess sifting through this pile of clutter is a good place to start looking. There it is. That's more like it, Matthew. This key you found on the chief's desk is actually a USB drive, which is much more likely to give us a lead on the Resistance. Let's get this USB drive to Kai. And this is 9 hours. I'll get the results of both of these tomorrow. So for now, this is Matthew. Catch you later. Okay, we are back. Let's get the results of the USB drive first. It's funny how this USB key was practically under our noses the whole time, Matthew. And it might literally be the key to understanding the Resistance. How so? This drive is a diary of the Chief's involvement with the Resistance. He wasn't their leader, but he's been aligned with them for months. Apparently, the Chief always believed something was wrong with history, but he never had proof until the day he received our letter. Once he realized that time travelers from an alternate timeline were stranded in the past, who somehow knew an alternate version of himself, he joined the Resistance and showed them our letter. Wait, the Resistance knows about us? Are they rebelling against the Ptolemy dynasty because they know this timeline shouldn't exist? Yes, which means we're not alone. Just as we'd hoped, Matthew. If we can cooperate with the Resistance, maybe we can fix this mess and restore the timeline. But the Chief's notes about the Resistance don't explain how to contact them, and Lenny Saunders told us everything he knows. You're right, Matthew. Anna Blanchard worked with the Chief when he was researching time travel. Maybe she knows something about the Resistance. Come on, Matthew. Hopefully Miss Blanchard is still out front. Ms. Blanchard, when you were working with Miss Scott, did he ever mention the Resistance? You can't go blurting out that word like that. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Just talking about them can get you into trouble. But if you're looking for the Resistance, that locked box over there with the infinity symbol on it, that's how they send messages to one another. But you need the key, and I can't help you with that. I think we've got that covered, right, Matthew? If you guys are going to meddle in Resistance business, you'll need all the energy you can get. And don't worry, I didn't dig this out of the trash. I could use something to eat, Matthew, but then it's straight across the street to unlock that box. There we are. This must be the Resistance's locked box, Matthew. That infinity symbol is identical to the one on the Chief's USB key. I'll slot the key into the box and... nothing's happening. I guess you also need a password. Go ahead and crack that encryption, Matthew. I'll make sure nobody sees you. Four, 8, 4, 4, 4. 4, 8, 4, 6, 4. 5, 8, 4, 6, 8. You've opened that locked box, Matthew. Now I can leave a message for the Resistance. What should we write? How about, we're friends of Christopher Scott. We sent him the letter from 1969. Please contact us. You can trust us. I guess that's all we can say, Matthew. We just have to hope the Resistance will respond. The New Cairo Times 5th of July celebrations. It's all very surreal, Matthew. It sure is. Did you learn anything about the Ptolemy dynasty from that article? The 5th of July celebrations commemorate the Ptolemy family's rise to power. Apparently, Pharaoh Ramses the 43rd. Yeah, I think that's the 43rd. Pharaoh Ramses the 43rd and his wife Queen Shapaka are direct descendants of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. So how come they're ruling in this timeline? How did this happen? I don't know, and this article obviously regards this version of history as completely normal. Nobody's aware things should be any different. Darn it. If there's anything in that article that might help us rescue... Is there anything in that article that might help us rescue Nebet? Our best opportunity could be the 5th of July celebrations themselves. Attendance is mandatory for all New Cairo citizens. The article also mentions the offering of tributes, but without explanation, I don't know if that's relevant. I don't relish talking to him, but Abrax Tiakin must know plenty about the Ptolemy dynasty. We could ask him what happens at these celebrations. I'll accompany you, Matthew. You never know if Mr. Tiakin will give you any trouble. You won't get away with this. When the Pharaoh finds out, you'll be fed to the crocodiles in Central Park. We're not here for monologuing, Tiakin. What do you know about the 5th of July celebrations and the offering of tributes? I refuse to answer. We could always have Kai muscle an answer out of you. Alright, I'll tell you. The offering of tributes is a marvelous tradition. As part of the celebrations, slaves willingly or unwillingly offer themselves to the Ptolemy family. The pharaoh is then free to do with them as he wishes. So tributes are slaves? Slaves, Matthew? That's the link! When we first met Nebet, she was Cleopatra's slave. My God, you're right. And if the pharaoh figures out Nebet served Cleopatra, he'll do anything to have her serve in his palace. It would be a travesty to see Nebet return to the bondage of slavery after tasting freedom. If Nebet is to become one of these tributes, then she's safe for now. The celebrations aren't for a couple of days, which gives us time to formulate a rescue plan. And what about me? I think we'll leave you here after we're gone. Once the royal guards arrive, you can explain how you let us slip through your fingers. No, you can't. Don't leave me here. We can and we will. For the first time since we arrived in this alternate 2029, I feel we're finally getting answers, Matthew. We don't know exactly how the Ptolemy dynasty rose to power, but it's obvious they manipulated the timeline to create this version of reality. And while most people are unaware that anything is wrong, there are those who understand this reality shouldn't exist and are opposing the family's reign. The chief is part of this resistance. Having reached out to them, all we can do now is await their response. But Nebet's still out there, possibly to be sold into slavery, or worse, on the 5th of July. We must figure out how to rescue her before that happens. We have a lot on our plate, Matthew, but we can risk getting caught. Someone's at the door, Matthew. What do we do? Quiet, everyone. It could be the Egyptian guards. Wait, I've checked the peephole. There's a woman outside, and she doesn't look like a guard. I'm inclined to open the door, Matthew. This could be the answer we've been waiting for. But be ready for action if this turns into a fight. Let's see what this woman wants. Isabel Huxley. Alright, who are you and what are you doing in Christopher's apartment? Who are you? You're the one bursting in, guns blazing. I got your message, if that really was you. That was us. You're from the Resistance? Yes, we've been watching you, scurrying around with your investigation. There's a bounty on your head. So I figured if you're wanted by the government, maybe this isn't a trap. I'm Isabel Huxley, the leader of the Resistance, but I still don't know who you are. We are Christopher's friends. In a matter of speaking, we're from an alternate timeline. You claim you left that letter in 1969. If that's true, tell me something only the people who left it would know. We posed as Christopher's parents, leaving that letter in a vault at the Grand Manhattan Bank. It really is you. You are from another timeline. We've always believed it was true, but to have you here in the flesh. We're just as overwhelmed by all of this. We were stranded in the past, and when we returned, our world was unrecognizable. In our timeline, we're from a law enforcement agency solving temporal crimes. Christopher is our chief. And where we're from, the Ptolemy dynasty doesn't exist. Some of Cleopatra's descendants are probably alive, but they aren't in power. We believe the Ptolemy family tampered with the timeline to engineer this version of reality. We suspect they sent someone to the past to deliberately sabotage us, so we couldn't prevent it. Now that you've returned to the present, we have a chance to overthrow the Ptolemy dynasty. Join the Resistance, Matthew. Help us put things right. I agree. If we're to have any chance of restoring the timeline, we must work together. We should go now. The government will be here any minute. And with your permission, we'd like to take Christopher's body. He'll be buried with the honor he deserves. Yes, of course. That's very kind. Put on this wig so nobody recognizes you on your way to the headquarters. Welcome to the Resistance, Matthew. Our world might have turned upside down, Matthew, but at least we're among people who can help us put things right. While it's nice to have a place to hide from the Pharaoh's guards, we know very little about this Resistance. I don't know if we can trust them. The chief trusted them and Isabel, so that's enough for me. Hopefully together we can make sense of what happened to the timeline and find a way to repair it. But right now, Matthew, get a good night's sleep. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Of course, it's July right around the corner. And it is released on the 4th of July. So, for now, Okay. Okay, so that's going to do. And I'll be seeing you guys on July 4th. So I'll catch y'all soon. So for now, this is Matthew. See you soon.